Hey guys, this is Peter. I wanted to remind listeners about the upcoming Bitcoin 2020 conference. It's being held in San Francisco on March 27th and 28th of next year, and announced speakers already include Tony Hawk and Nick Szabo. Plus, there's going to be a Lightning Arcade and an art gallery with Bitcoin-inspired art, plus a ton more still to be announced. To learn more and get your tickets, visit bitcoin2020.com. It's time for another episode of Bitcoin Magazine's Weekly Bits, the podcast where our newsroom staff discusses some of our most interesting, timely, and critical stories. As always, my name is Peter Chihuaga, and today I am joined in the studio by Associate Editor and Staff Writer Colin Harper. Colin, it's good to have you again. How's your Thanksgiving?
It was good, man. How was yours?
It was good, very chill, and took a moment to remember what I'm thankful for. Of the many things that includes getting to work with the likes of you, Colin.
Yeah, man. Always a good day when we can grind out one of these podcasts, or when we can talk about, especially some of these stories, because it's always kind of fun about the holiday season as everything starts to wind down. I feel like around this time we usually always have a lot of really good, feel-good community stories. You know what I mean?
It's definitely a chance, and I think the industry at whole takes a minute to back up. Stop pointing fingers at altcoins and whatnot. And you do get some of the more positive, longer form, feature style pieces, which as a reader are just my personal favorite. And I think this episode of the podcast, we could kind of consider it a bit of a holiday special in that sense, because what I wanted to discuss were two of your most recent stories. They're currently on our homepage, and they really are about Bitcoin and kind of the gift of giving, which obviously is relevant for this time of year. So for those listeners who want to check them out, read the full stories we're about to discuss. As I said, they're on the bitcoinmagazine.com homepage. The first one is titled Give Bitcoin Wants You to Give Bitcoin This Holiday Season. And then the other one would be the nonprofit push to make Giving Tuesday about giving Bitcoin. So for starters, Colin, I wanted to ask on that first story how you first heard about Give Bitcoin and what they're doing.
Yeah, so I met Corey Clipston, which is one of the co-founders at Bitcoin Is, which was Russell Okung's event in LA. And he was talking to me about it, and we were just talking about how hard it is to get your loved one sometimes into Bitcoin, especially if they're if they barely know how their computer works, or even if they're just kind of skeptical or don't really care about money that much. And he was pitching me his startup, which for you listeners, Give Bitcoin is a way for you to give Bitcoin, inherent in the name, to anyone you want to, and you time lock it for a period of a year to 5 years. This time lock is not on the chain. It is actually custodied in a bank prime trust. But what it's accompanied with 12 chapters that explain to you what Bitcoin is, why it was created, best practices, how to use it. It even gets into stuff like the Lightning Network and things like that. I think personally, I love the idea because I think it strikes a good compromise between educating and kind of giving someone a guarantee that their Bitcoin won't be, messed with after they buy it. Because I think that's a big hurdle for people, is what happens if I mess up and lose my keys? You hear all these stories about exchange hacks and people losing their money. And so the custody with Silvergate, it's a bank in Nevada, I think really kind of mitigates against that. And it also gives you a time that if the people that you're giving it to want to, they can learn about Bitcoin.
Right, and on some level, they're forced to learn about Bitcoin. Or I don't know if I had this fear until I thought about it reading this article, but what if you give someone Bitcoin and they're like, oh, cool, thanks, $20 worth of Bitcoin, let me liquidate this and never worry about the technology again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really cool that you can do the 5-year time lock, because if you really want to, if you got someone who's really skeptical in your life and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to put $100 worth of Bitcoin into this for you, but you can't touch it for 5 years. if I'm right, we'll see what it's gonna be, and if you're right, well, we'll see, But I also think it is good for that in the sense that you don't have to worry about them selling it or losing it, and they can really start learning about it, and they can kind of, as they're learning about it, they can track the market and track the news and track development and see if it actually sticks for them. Because I really do think that the only way to really get people interested in Bitcoin is to just get them skin in the game. And I've always thought that giving it to people is the best. Like, I've given Bitcoin to some of my family members who are definitely interested but don't really understand it enough, and they need someone to help them take that leap. And I think that's what this really helps provide and streamline.
Yeah, so maybe you've kind of fully expressed your thoughts on that there. I was going to ask, though, I mean, so this isn't exactly a charity, so I don't mean to mischaracterize this as the gift of giving in the sense that it's like fully in that holiday spirit. But at the same time, obviously you are gifting Bitcoin to someone, and they do have a higher mission here at Give Bitcoin, which is, to evangelize the technology. As you say, and that's a common phrase, having skin in the game is kind of the most powerful way to turn skeptics into Bitcoin believers. Is there anything else you'd elaborate on, something maybe you've seen anecdotally, personally, about the difference between, telling your loved ones about Bitcoin and explaining why it's great versus like giving them some Bitcoin and making it personal for them?
Yeah, I think that you can explain it all you want, and I think that the most effective strategy I found for really trying to hammer home why the thing, like how we see it, I think there's every time that you explain it, if it's not hitting home, you have to alter how you explain it and give another perspective and try to make it personal to the user, and kind of try to work at an angle that, they may have, like, for instance, like the gold bugs are a perfect example. Like, gold bugs are the easiest to convert. But then when you start trying to pitch it to other people, you have to think about the way they see the world. And I definitely do think that owning some Bitcoin is important for that. That's why, again, I do like this because of the educational aspect.
But it's hard to give. But there's another reason I like this. I totally agree that giving someone Bitcoin, it's a cool gift for a bunch of reasons. One, yes, like now I'm forcing you to be like me. You're going to be Bitcoin now. But it's cool. It's like unique. There's certain people, like tech people in my family, I can't think of what to get them. But I'm like, they would probably like some Bitcoin. But it's actually kind of hard to gift. There are a couple solutions out there. I think BitPiggies is meant to do that too, right?
Yeah, and then there's like things like Open Dime, which is like a one-time use, which is kind of cool in the sense that you load it up, and then if they're just trying to hold it, as long as they have that Open Dime, and I'm pretty sure you can extract this or have the seed phrase from it. So if it gets damaged, you can change it. But it's not as good as a hardware wallet, obviously. But I think it's a good thing to be like, hey. It's kind of interesting because you could be like, I'm giving you this. If you lose this, then all this is gone. So if you want me to show you how to use this for real, then let me know.
Right.
And then, there's also, things like BitPiggies, which is, I think, it's not necessarily a similar concept, but it has like a seed phrase. So it's kind of like a paper wallet. And then I also think, like, if you can afford it, I think just giving people a hardware wallet with like $100, especially if there's someone like, if you're really trying to go full Bitcoiner for Christmas and not give people like another like freaking jacket or something, just buy them like a Trezor or an Open Dime with like $50 worth of Bitcoin.
For sure. I was also going to ask, so anytime I read an article and I see the word custody in it, that just instantly kind of raises my eyebrows a little bit.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of a necessary part of this whole Give Bitcoin concept. Because we were talking about the time locks and how it's actually, I think in both of our opinion, a cool aspect of this program. But is it disingenuous in your mind at all that you're telling people about Bitcoin, giving them the, guide about why it's so important and what philosophies are behind it, and then you're kind of like trusting your custody with the third party?
I mean, I'm of the mindset, obviously, that everyone should custody their own coins. I think that it's an interesting question because that was the first thing too. When I was talking to Corey, I was like, "Oh, so it's time locked," and he was using time lock. He's like, "Well, it's time locked in, custody with Silverbank, this bank in Arizona." And I think ultimately, you're going to have that trade off for some people, and I think that it's especially going to be important for people in the United States who are so comfortable with the traditional banking sector or the idea of custody. And I think that ultimately, the government and banks in America will never crush Bitcoin because there's going to be too many politicians and too many bankers and too many people who actually end up storing their wealth there. Sorry, that was kind of a tangent. But I think that it's a necessary bridge, and I think that certain people are going to have a certain amount of custody over their funds. If they want to be really just use Bitcoin for what it was made for to be their own bank, I think they're going to have plenty of people doing that. I think there are going to be a lot of people who want to have some sort of custody somewhere. And, I think it's you'll see banks in the future probably doing multi-sig and things like that. But, the other thing I would say is I think that it's good. This time lock is good because it gives people the opportunity, obviously, to really let them think about it and say, okay, we'll hold it for you in a bank until you have time to think about it and see if you really want to take custody for yourself. And then they can make the decision whether or not they want to withdraw it. I'm never going to necessarily slide someone for custodying their Bitcoin unless it's, it's got to be an honest actor. And I think Silvergate, they bank with a lot of Bitcoin and crypto businesses, and they've been very foundational to have a backbone of liquidity for businesses, especially bank lines. And also if the legal guarantees are there. Obviously, some cypherpunks will not like this, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have to embrace this kind of, sounds like a necessary evil in some sense for this platform to work, and you're also providing some, evangelical information about the ethos behind Bitcoin, I personally would give them a pass as well. Mm-hmm. So to move on to your other article about Giving Tuesday, which I mentioned at the top of the show. So this article is about a platform that enables Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency donations, and it's super relevant post Thanksgiving. So it seemed like a good one to discuss. But could you just provide maybe a quick synopsis of it?
Yeah, so it's this company called the Giving Block, and they have a point of sale solution for charities, and they've got 100 or something charities that you can choose from, and you can donate to them, and they cash the money out and then pay the charities. So it's obviously heavily intermediated. There's some, I don't think there's any charity that accepts Bitcoin directly. Some actually I think might and keep it, but it's not very many. But yeah, it's a cool kind of, I don't know, incentivizes kind of that circular economy. And there are some benefits even for the user because donating Bitcoin is akin to donating capital, like a stock. So you get a tax break for capital gains. It's not that much, but, for Bitcoin, it's actually interesting for Bitcoin because what you could do theoretically, depending on where you bought something, right? Because that's how the IRS has broken up the tax incentive. Is they've said, or the tax code, as they say, you can basically choose different increments of Bitcoin that you bought at different times and sell them or donate them. And then depending on which ones you're choosing, that's the one that you're declaring on your taxes, right? So, if you bought Bitcoin, if you bought a little, some amount of Bitcoin, from a long time ago, you could just donate that and then not have to declare capital gains.
So I'm not surprised that you figured this out, Con, but I'll make clear that this is not the Giving Block's business model.
Not at all. But, so Giving Block is just trying to, they process Bitcoin and cryptocurrency payments for nonprofits. Cool project.
Yeah, and you wanted to write about it now because Giving Tuesday, which is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, is just sort of I think, celebratory day to remember kind of the true spirit of Thanksgiving, encourage people to donate to charities their time or their funds.
And Christmas, too. It's interesting that it's on the onset of December. It's reminding people, you're about to probably, especially in America, speaking from the American context, in a certain, middle class, but, you're going to be spending a shit ton of money, so... Don't forget to donate some of that as well.
And so they've got a social media campaign going on, Giving Bitcoin. And my personal favorite part of the article is that, you found that Dwight Schrute from The Office, played by Rainn Wilson, has jumped on that campaign to kind of pump his charity. So there's a little video from Dwight in there.
Yeah, man, that was pretty fun. I'm trying to see if I can find it on the article. But they told me that, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" So I'm a huge Office fan.
I think he makes he throws out the hodler term. I don't know how much he really
hodlers
cares
donate Bitcoin to the Mona Foundation and give the gift of education.
There you go.
And he's got a really big, bushy peppered beard. I mean, it's not even peppered; it's straight gravy, man. It's
Getting away from that Dwight look.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that's all to say. I mean, they've got some traction, and it seems like a cool campaign at an appropriate time. And
yeah, and it brings up an interesting question because I think Bitcoin it's amazing. It has a long history of philanthropic efforts. Like, you have BitGive, you have HelperBit, which is a crowdfunding platform. You also obviously have the Pineapple Fund. It was like something 5,755 or 5,057 Bitcoin that was donated to various causes, and at its peak, that was like over $80 million.
Yeah, that's like legendary.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think that's incredible. I would really love to know who Pine is.
Yeah,
I mean, because that's probably some OG who mined some just absolute obscene amount of Bitcoin.
We should break that story, but
yeah,
you're right. I mean, must be somebody who was in there when you could get thousands of BTC relatively easily.
For sure. And
then if I did that, just for the record, I might feel the same way. Like, first of all, I would definitely keep some left over for, the yacht and whatnot. But if I had, not going to diminish sort of the foresight it took to see how powerful Bitcoin could become, but I would feel a little bit like, oh, wow, this is really easy for me to get. It really took off. I would frankly not be able to believe it. And so part of me would feel like, let's really give this off to a great cause. And in addition to the funds that obviously went to help people, the Pineapple Fund is like this really cool narrative that I think the crypto space has that counters some of the more mainstream, negative stereotypes that you might get.
Yeah.
And so that was super powerful about it.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I think that it's like, what you said, it's like there was so much. Like Bitcoin because it's become so massive, there's so much wealth that has been generated from it, and I think it's kind of a shame if that doesn't go back into the into the community. But I can't say what I would do if I had like 100,000 Bitcoin, but I mean if I had 100,000, I'd imagine giving away 5,000.
That's gonna find its way to
like 5,000. That's 5% of my outstanding. You know what I mean? Like I'm not worried about that. But it's funny because I had someone comment on the article on Twitter. It's like, I'm not going to spend my precious sats. I'm going to spend my fiat. Yeah. And I'm always like, yeah, I get it. I would spend and replace, but I think it's kind of cool, like to be able to use it.
And that kind of brings me to my next question. So the other thing, in addition to Dwight's shout out video that I found particularly interesting in the article, Patrick Duffy, who's the Giving Block's co-founder, he had some really strong statements about how powerful kind of nonprofits will be to the Bitcoin adoption.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially he drew a straight line between, charity, nonprofit will directly create mainstream Bitcoin adoption, more or less. And that struck me as strong. I mean, I can see where he's coming from, and I agree, but I don't know. What did you think when you heard that in the interview?
I mean, maybe Bitcoin will do this, I do think it's important. I mean, I think it's important for pain points around the world, right? Mm-hmm. Like, your Save the Children or your Red Crosses, they're going to have all the payment rails, right? So, in terms of the big charities that people think about donating to, probably, I mean, they might accept Bitcoin and they would get Bitcoin donations, but that's not going to change their position, I don't think, or really make Bitcoin look any better. But I think Bitcoin really helps with things like Bitcoin Venezuela or, circumventing sanctions and getting capital into a country that, it works for edge cases beautifully. And I think that's where it's posed. It's actually, I think it's a little more bold. I think that Bitcoin can help nonprofits, but most of the nonprofits that we'd think about maybe propelling Bitcoin to mass adoption, they don't have problems securing money. Yeah. Their pipelines are clear. The only thing that I could see really being if a bunch of nonprofits started just holding Bitcoin and not spending it, and maybe their war chests increased, then maybe, but
yeah, well, I think I'm not sure this is exactly what he meant, but then Patrick Duffy kind of, points out that a lot of the nonprofit causes have the exact same issues that Bitcoin solves. So, as you say, adoption in Venezuela or in Hong Kong. So that's not exactly a nonprofit or a charitable donation, but I think there is some synergy overlap between the world problems that a cause like UNICEF is trying to solve, and Bitcoin as a use case, as an adopted solution to like other global strife issues.
And I think that, ultimately, I mean, the answer also to like, will Bitcoin be a game changer for nonprofits is like, it depends on how many people see value in it. Because if a circular economy,
right,
like if we get to a circular economy with Bitcoin, then like it's amazing for that work, right? I think that would solve a lot of problems. But you got to get the people right now. Most of the Bitcoin is immediately converted to fiat anyway.
Yeah.
For these nonprofits, even like Bitcoin Venezuela, like they're having to find a way to change it into something else, like dollars or something, to buy the goods for people. But it still slips through the cracks, and that's its number one use case, is just to be global money that you send anywhere. Hopefully, if we get to a circular economy, then it will do exactly what he probably imagines it will do.
One day.
One day.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me again, Colin, making this an extra special holiday-themed episode of Weekly Bits. But is there anything else I didn't ask about that you thought we should touch on for either of those two articles?
Nothing with those two articles, but tangentially related in terms of giving Bitcoin and things, or Bitcoin philanthropy. That anonymous fund, man. Mm-hmm. I want to keep following up with them because I wonder what their motive is. I talked to a few. I know this kind of seems totally like not related because I was kind of the dark side of it. Right. Because so for those who don't know, this anonymous group posted this blog post probably about a month ago now, saying they were going to donate $75 million worth of Bitcoin to various startups. And I actually talked to a few people who submitted proposals, and they said they would get back to them. I haven't received anything back follow-up wise, but I want to know what's going on with that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's sort of like, again, I think there's a fine line of like what counts as philanthropy and what's just sort of like, I don't know. So like, I think it actually well summarized in the two articles that you've done. So like the giving block is donating to charities that help people in need that probably don't care that much whether it's Bitcoin or cash or how they're getting the aid that they need. Yeah. And then Give Bitcoin is more like evangelizing the technology and like for Bitcoiners who want to influence more Bitcoin, but it is a gift. And so anonymous, I might put more in that the Give Bitcoin. Yeah,
this is category. It's like basically like a VC fund,
right?
Like
exactly. But in some sense, definitely like I don't know. I mean, Bitcoin is great for donations to causes that you care about, and then sort of regardless of who else cares about those causes. That's kind of what's so cool about Bitcoin giving, I feel.
Yeah, and I think also especially between Bitcoiners, like being able to pay and send things or like fund things in Bitcoin, it's so easy. It's just like, hey man, what's your wallet? Yeah, like your funds are there in 10 minutes.
Enjoy.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Peter. This was really fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Where can listeners follow you and see more of your stories?
I'm on Bitcoin Magazine, obviously, and you can also find me on Twitter at As I Lay Hodling. I'm also just Colin Harper on Twitter, 1L. You'll see my profile picture and the handle. It's not the band. Everyone says that it's the band. I don't think As I Lay Dying is like a screamo band, right? It's like a hardcore metal band.
I don't know. It's this awesome novel by
that's why I named it. Yeah. And like I actually was kind of a clowny before I created my Twitter. I like listed like a bunch of Faulkner novels. I was like, how can I make?
I think it's genius.
How can I make a pun with this? Thanks, man. But yeah, you can find me there. Where can people find you, Peter?
I'm at Peter Chihuahua. I'm sure I'll be in the show notes, but that's CHAWAGA. I'm sure I'm the only Chihuahua on the internet, so if you find out, that'll be me. The Bitcoin Magazine Weekly Bits podcast is a BTC Media produced podcast on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. You can find more engaging podcasts over at letstalkbitcoin.com, and you can follow them on Twitter at the LTB Network for all the latest episodes. Be sure to subscribe to the show on the Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next week.